$50, they got to come to us. So they can spend over $1,000 within a line item.
But can they move an appropriation from one line item
No.
to another?
No. No.
Without your permission?
No.
None at all?
Right.
Okay. That's
I mean, to do it right, they've got to spend it within that line item. They can't buy something that boots out of communications. They can't put that in that line item. They've got to put it under uniform. Okay?
Well, I don't think we're on the same track, because
Okay.
what I'm talking about is, for instance, taking $50,000 from special details and moving it over to another line item.
No. No. Can't do that.
They could. They did last year.
No, no.
They're saying they can't now.
They can't do that. They've got to spend it within that line item. They can't move it from one to the other.
The commissioners, if there is, they say, $10,000 worth on one line item.
Yeah.
And that gets expended to $15,000. Then what happens, the department head is in trouble at the moment in that account line item. They will go to the commissioners. The commissioners pick that up. The commissioners realize that that $5,000 is now overspent, and it has to be, that $5,000 needs to be moved. Tell me if I'm wrong.
What we're trying to do, Madam Chairman, is to prevent them from going $1,000 over the line item. So it's not after it's been spent, it's prior to spending.
Yeah. But I think Representative, and I understand where you are, so that if it's $10,000 on the line item, and they have spent, and it's been posted that there's $909,000 spent, and they want to spend $1,200, they're going to go over that $10,000 by whatever amount. They got to get an approval from the commissioners if it's more than $1,000.
Right.
I'm sorry, it can't be just $250.
Right.
Yeah. Then, for accounting purposes, after it's spent, and the commissioners want to stop this process before it is spent, but after it's spent, if the line item goes over, so it's $12,000 instead of $10,000, then of the line item, then the commissioners can put that $2,000 someplace else.
No.
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 Okay, so
we can't change that line item. That money has got to be in that line item.
Yeah.
What we're saying, though, is if they overspend by $500, they don't have to come to us. But they still have to make sure it doesn't go over the bottom line.
Bottom line. Okay.
Okay? We're not going to move money from one line item to the other. I hope that we don't. That's happened in the past.
When we do transfers, when you bring us transfers from one account to another account,
Right.
From one department to another department.
Right.
Okay.
We have to do that before we can transfer any money. Delegation has to approve that.
Yes.
Bottom line to bottom line. Okay?
Representative.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Commissioner, in the scenario you just gave, it seemed to be conflicting. You said if you have $10,000 and you're going over $500,
they can spend up to $1,000 before they need to come to us.
Right. So, but you also said you can't check it from line item to line item. So if they don't have the money, where are they going to get this magical $500? It's under $1,000.
As long as they don't go over the bottom line. Some other line item may be less.
So you can change line items as long as it's up to $1,000. You're saying two things that are completely in conflict.
Wait a minute, Joe. Representative Fleck.
Are you saying this, I think you're saying this, that we want the budget information for the expenditures to be a historical document so that we know exactly what was spent from year to year on a specific item.
Right.
And then each department head must continuously look at their bottom line within that area and make sure that whatever expenditures there are never exceed their bottom line for
Right.
that area.
Right.
Isn't that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
So we do two things. We keep the budget in balance.
Yep,
And we also know historically where the money is being spent.
right.
Yeah, sir.
No, this is point of order. Commissioner Sorensen, the spending controls that you've been talking about for the last little while have not been formally approved, to my knowledge.
Hopefully my philosophy as the chairman of the commission is, and we've all agreed at the beginning of the year, that any major changes in policy or changes in revenue or expenditures, that all three of us act on it, not just two of us. Okay, it only takes two, but to be fair, I prefer to have all three commissioners acting on it. That's why it hasn't been passed. Hopefully when the third commissioner comes back, we'll do that, because it's been out enough now and explained enough so that I hope the three commissioners understand it. We will then have a meeting of all department heads to make sure everybody hears it
At the same time?
at the same time, so there's no confusion. And again, it's anticipation of going over $1,000 over a single line item that they need to come to us to get permission. Bottom line stays the same, that hasn't changed. If we change the bottom line, if they go over the bottom line, we need to get permission from you guys to get it from some other bottom line.
That's the
Okay.
transfers that we have.
Yeah, and we can't go over that
No.
until we get permission from you.
All right, Representative McCarthy.
But again, thank you, Madam Chair. Again, before they get to that $1,000 limit,
Yes,
as Representative Babson said, they have to get that money from somewhere. So they got to take that money from a different line item and move it over. So
Well-
you're allowing them to move up to $1,000 without your permission.
no, we're talking about the bottom line.
I'm talking about line items, not the bottom line. I'm talking about appropriations as it is spelled out
Yep.
in the
Yep.
RSAs.
Yep.
An appropriation is a line item.
Okay.
And the
Yep.
delegation goes a line item, by line item,
Yep.
by line item,
Yep.
and says, this is how much you get for that line item.
That's right.
And if they're allowed to move money from one line item to another, they're usurping our authority.
Maybe then it's the interpretation of what we're talking about. I'm saying that if the expense has to be in that line item, and they go over by $500 of what you had approved in that line item, some other line item down here, they may be under-expended $500. But as long as they don't go over the bottom line,
That's not what the RSAs say.
Now we're getting into something,
Yeah.
we're not ever gonna get through the rest of our whole meeting if we do this. We need to figure out how in the world we're going to do appropriations and do it. And I understand that we need to be able to do this during the budget season. We're having a situation that we're not coming up with an answer. So let's see if we can figure out how in the world we can explain what it is we do when there is over expenditures. And then that will be it. Yes, Representative Algren, and then we'll go on, because I'd like to talk about 501(c)(3)s. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So, thank you, Madam Chair, and I understand where you're coming from, Representative McCarthy. However, we have, as a delegation, approximately 3 years ago, by vote, determined that an appropriation would be the departmental total. Okay, that is what we consider the appropriation, which is the form, I always forget the number, that we send to Concord, because that's all the form has that we send to Concord. We at that time just determined that that would be what we considered our appropriations. Okay, so when we say an appropriation, it's pretty much by department. Now, what the commissioners have said, that in an effort to stop what happened when a department head could take a budget line of, say, $20,000, if they overspend it, that particular line item, by more than $1,000, they now have to get permission from the commissioners They don't have the ability to overspend a line $20,000 and overspend some other line or cumulative other lines to $20,000 to make their departmental total still balance. They are instituting a policy for each department head that says you may not spend more than $1,000 of that budget line, and then without permission. They may have just reason, and the reason why we did that was to hopefully give, not to micromanage each department, and allow them the flexibility to float some of their money back and forth between line items, but not to the extent where it's being abused. And the policies that I believe the commissioners have almost instituted, or at least proposed, seems to be helping to that end, to avoid one line to be grossly overspent and as it may have been in the past. So where we come to differ is what our definition of an appropriation is. And that's where I think where the confusion is. And that may be something that we can take up at a future meeting, because that was more what your motion was dealing with, is to make appropriations every single line. So that's my best explanation of what the commissioner was trying to state. And I commend them, because I believe that is a good policy to help keep that from going on.
Representative McCarthy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also commend them for attempting to correct a problem. However, I disagree with you respectfully. The reserve statutes annotated definition of an appropriation is funds appropriated to be spent for a specific purpose, a line item. It doesn't say line item this year. It might next year if my bill gets through. But it does say an appropriation is for an amount of money to be spent for a specific purpose. It's not the bottom. If you read all of the RSAs, you will find that there are many places in there where where it infers that an appropriation is a line item, not the bottom line.
All right, we are not going to resolve this issue. We have a difference of opinion. We have to figure out what we're going to do with it, and we'll go from there. We have now next on our agenda, we have the 5013C. I know that I had to leave the last time. There was a discussion about the fact is that we can't expend that money coming into 5013C3 to reduce debt. And I don't know, and I'm thanking Maureen for staying at these occasions, I don't know who has a report to give to us or whatever, but I would like to have some discussion because I know that the committee has had a problem with it. The delegation thinks one thing, and so whoever has information to give us, I'm more than willing to take it.
I did give a report at the end. It's on tape, but the bottom line is the 501c3 is a nonprofit group.
Yes, why don't you stand up and come a little closer?
And
thank you.
The delegation doesn't have any authority to direct us where to spend that money. I did have a comment from Terry Knowles, which I read. The mission statement is in the book, your annual report, which hopefully everybody read. So basically the bottom line is no.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if you, Mr. Albee can answer any other questions if you.
Does anybody have any questions on the 5013C? That was the $2 million. The first $2 million was going to go to debt reduction, and that was what our motion said, and it doesn't look like we can do that. Representative Comeau.
So when you structured the 501c3 and made the decisions about how it was going to be structured, you did that as the committee, and that information never came back to the delegation until such time as your 501c3 was approved by the IRS.
That's correct.
Okay, so in the instructions that I thought we had provided on the 501c3 was the condition that some of the money collected should go to the paying the debt